Hi, Facebook, and welcome back to us. You know, it's me and Armando Randy Gomez and Miss Sharon Burney, and we are here to talk to you again as promised. As it relates to tomorrow is an election day. So in Florida, August 20th, well, elections always fall on every Tuesday, but one for that most impacts us in Alachua County is happening. We're gonna have Armando and Sharon to start off the discussion to talk about some of the things that have happened around the country, and then we can actually get into the conversation about why that's important here. And then, as promised, we will talk about the candidates on the ballot to help people who haven't voted yet feel more equipped before they hit the polls. Shannon Armando, is it good for me to go ahead and turn it over to you both?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting enough, as we head into our own Democratic primary, we noticed a pattern that's happening across the nation with some of the Democratic Party nominees. And one such was what happened in St. Louis, where Wesley Bell, who was supposed to run for Senate in the Democratic primary, then there was some moves made behind the scenes to have him run against Cori Bush. And like what exactly happened here in Gainesville, Wesley Bell did call Cori Bush and promised Cori Bush that he was not running against her in the primary. And this was all done by the puppet masters, the handlers who determine what's best for the Black community that never benefits the Black community. So when you have a community member, representative such as Cori Bush in St. Louis, who has the relationships, who has the experience, and knows the community and demands that the community get what's right for the community, what happens is handlers come in and they determine what's best for the Black community as a whole. And I'm not talking about a few outliners or gatekeepers or profiteers or opportunists. I'm talking about what's best for the community to grow as a whole. So what they did is they inserted themselves and they offered a big cash puppy for the nominee for their election, and offered Wesley Bell a backdoor deal that we're going to support you. We're going to put all this money and finances behind you, and you're going to run against Cori Bush, who was actually doing effective change in the St. Louis community. And that person then ran and she lost a strong race because each and every person wasn't out there like they should have been on the grounds working on behalf of the people that show up, and they do work on behalf of you for the best interest. They stand up to anybody who suggests otherwise of what's needed and necessary for our communities to not just merely exist, but to thrive. And that's what's happening here in the local community in Gainesville with Desmond Duncan Walker's case. And I want you to think about this when you move into Tuesday's elections. We're going to get to that a little later, but who is advocating for what's best for you to thrive, for your community as a whole to get out of poverty, to move beyond just surviving, to move beyond lower middle class, barely middle class, but to thrive the same way that you see the west side of the community thriving. And then pass it on to Armando.
I think these systems of what we're talking about and how they're impacting us and people that are choosing our elected officials or who governs us is so problematic. It has been so destructive in our community, from examples of the levels of scale of economy from one side of town to the other side of town. When we have so-called hand-picked leaders or hand-picked folks to want to govern us, we don't really need that kind of help. And I think, to Sharon's point, it also leads to the administrative and day-to-day leaders that are appointed and not elected, but the ones that are appointed that are overseeing the day-to-day affairs. When you have parks being shut down in your community, when you have levels of emergency service that sometimes you're getting less of police services that are taking longer to come to you and your family, or firefighters that are taking longer to come to you and your family. This is all impacting quality of life issues. And so when we're talking about a thing such as what happened to St. Louis, what happened to St. Louis happens here in Gainesville all the time. And it's the same game, the same coin, just a flipped coin, but the same game. And so we need to really think about that, how that looks in totality, because all of it is interrelated. It also impacts when we're talking about the level of devastation of economic impact, when you don't have quality industry, when you don't have it, it also impacts the quality of schools, the very tax base. When we're concentrating poverty in one central geographic area, that's done purposely. That's done. And so it's interesting when we hear folks that say they're coming in here and they're saying, we want your support. And we sometimes naively give them our support. And we don't know these people, but they say they're our allies. And I think I've heard Sharon on a couple of occasions say, you don't get to self-proclaim yourself an ally to our community. We get to tell you that. You don't get to come here and just say, I'm an ally to you. So when those leaders are handpicked and taking out people that we have institutional knowledge of, that we know has supported us and helping build community, we need to take a step back. And it's okay that we've done it for the past. We want to talk about moving forward. And the way we move forward. Go ahead, Sharon.
Before you talk about that one step before there, what we've been trying to get to for the last few weeks is to get you to move beyond this culture that has been created here. This is what's really sad to me. This is a culture that's been created where people who don't look like you, people who are not suffering institutionally or systemically from the policies that they are creating. These people are determining what is best for you. And we're trying to, it's almost a patriarchal parental type of control and it's arrogantly ownership of the Black community. And that's what's really disturbing. When it's time for us to talk about what's best for us, then everybody wants to get involved and tell you, well, this is my friend, you should vote for my friend. And your friendship doesn't override what's best for the entire community. And the thought process that your friendship is more important about what's wrong for the community than us is really, really disturbing viewpoint. And that speaks to privilege, that speaks to unrecognized bias, that speaks to unrecognized and unacknowledged racist oppression. That just call it what it is. Your friendship does not override what's best for the community as a whole. We're not going to pick our vote based on your friendship with somebody and the audacity to even imply that I should forget what I'm supposed to do because you speak from a place of prejudice and determine that your friendship is more important than what is important for the community. And then I'm defer back to you.
Thank you, Sharon. I think to the larger point, I was hearing some feedback there. I think to the larger point of also is we have to take a step back. What does moving forward look like? It's not just saying we need to move forward. We need to articulate what that looks like. And how do we want to live? And how do we want to govern? What kind of community do we want to have as a people? What kind of schools do we want to have? What do those schools look like? Not just naming them after somebody, not just changing the names. It's more than that. What kind of curriculum do you want to teach? What kind of art do you want in your schools? What kind of business and industry? Because if we look back when we were successful as a people, let's even go back, even in the time of Jim Crow, let's go back to when we had our own businesses as a people, how we thrived. When we went and bought from ourselves, we look at how when we spend the very money that a lot of us work very hard for every week, and we were spending it, those dollars circulated in our community. We are spending dollars outside of our community to make others very wealthy. I challenge us to start taking our power back. Let me give you a perfect example of for me, after the murder of George Floyd, I had to reevaluate the very relationships and people who I was doing business with. I wanted to change who I was banking with, who I was doing my car insurance with, all those things. I wanted to reevaluate those relationships. And some people could say that's racism or bigotry. I look at, they're doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm just doing it just as well as they're doing it. And you know what? I did that as best I could, as much as I could. But all of us need to start doing that. If we want to build community, then we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over from there. So let's
So
go on
I
to
want to jump in on the point that you just made, Armando, as best as we can, as much as we can. And that's actually part of the issue. Part of the issue is we don't have any infrastructure within our communities. And part of that is by their design, but then also by their programming. And so what happens is we we are in such scarcity mindset, and they have developed things where life is so difficult that any little convenience that we have, we're willing to hold on to it, even if it's to our own detriment. And what I mean by that is, for example, in East Gainesville, the grocery store model that is best serves us would be like a co-op. Whenever you talk to many people in East Gainesville about a co-op, they don't want that because they see it as work and more aggravation. Oh, I just want a big box like Publix. Oh, I just want this or that. But not realizing that the money that Publix makes off of us, they utilize it to do things like fund January the 6th. They utilize it to do things like fund legislators that make decisions that are directly opposed to us. And it's that level of, convenience that we're seeking that we don't realize that we're settling for absolute scraps. It's frustrating as well that we don't have any infrastructure because we are the spenders. So literally by us being able to build infrastructure in our communities and businesses that people can patronize that go across the spectrum, our communities will absolutely thrive. But in order to be able to get there with that infrastructure, there's two things that has to happen. One, we have to be uncomfortable. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, understanding that there's a goal on the other end. We've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable, just treading water. And so being able to change that mindset, but also too, acknowledging how our school system has created and perpetuated this mindset as well. Because throughout the school system and our healthcare systems and other systems, we are programmed to believe that we don't have a voice. We're not allowed to advocate for ourselves in healthcare. Parents are not allowed to advocate for their students in school. If you do, you're deemed a troublemaker. You're deemed this person or that difficult, even if you're ask actual questions. Additionally, even with parents with kids that have like IEPs and 504s, just the number of meetings that I go to where parents, I have no idea that literally it's their determination for their child because the manner in which the school sets it up, they already pre-fill the IEP. They throw a bunch of stuff at the parent and say, this is what we're going to do, without actually having the parent to be there as a collaborative partner. And so understanding those thought processes must shift, because if they shift, they'll actually help people to understand why voting is also important and plays such an integral role.
And I want to piggyback off that, Shanae, when it comes to our school system. What would it look like for a school system to have leaders that are accountable and have the behavior and leadership that they expect of the very students that they're in charge of? We need to have leaders in our public school system, elected and unelected, that are over our children, that are just as accountable and have the behaviors and standards that they have in the expectation of our children. That is the type of structure and leaders we need to have. And I think that's also important when we're electing our leaders for the school board going forward as well.
And when we think about the behavior, we see just behavioral issues, but we need to also think about. I implore every parent to look at the documentary called The Social Experiment and understand why social media was created, what it does to your child's attention span, what the food that they eat does to their attention span, the lack of food security and housing security, when we override their households with stress because they're trying to make ends meet, when your electricity bill is rising and rising every month, when you don't have when you have instability in even getting your child to and from school while you're trying to work so many hours. These are all things that lead to their inability to thrive in school and to have all of the things that they need. And we're not even going to talk in what they're building our schools on or not, the infrastructure at the schools, mold and mildew and air conditioning not working and plumbing and those type of things. So all of these things add up, will show you how important it is for you to go out here and make the decisions about people and for people who represent the community as a whole and not vested backdoor interests. Shanae or Armando, do we want to add to that, or we want to talk about the term?
Let's move on.
Okay. I think the next thing we want to address was the turnout. Shanae, did you want to take the lead on that? Looks like okay. So before she works out or her mute issues, let's talk about the turnout tomorrow. Let's talk about historically, Armando, how close local races tend to be in the average of those.
Yeah, so we have turnout around just below or around 14% for early voting so far going to this election. For our community, it's anywhere between 10, 12, 13%. If you're living in the city limits, and it's not looking too promising right now. But what does that say about what we value, where we stand? So people always say, well, voting doesn't matter, it doesn't affect anything. And I challenge that mindset, and I'll challenge it with this. There was a presidential election about 24 years ago that was decided by less than 500 votes in the nation, and it happened in this very state we live in, here in the state of Florida. The election between George W. Bush and Albert Gore was determined by less than 600 votes. So to say that your vote doesn't matter is absurd. It doesn't make sense. And so what we all need to do is, we're the first in our community when things are going wrong to be up there and complaining. And then we're the last to want to do something about it when we have the opportunity to do something about it. And if you want to do something about it, we need to take control of our lives. We need to take control of our communities. We don't do that just by electing it. We control who leads us, how they lead us. Because it's interesting when either party, insert party here, it doesn't matter what the party is. It's, every 4 years comes around, everybody seems to care about our vote. Because they know coming here, they're going to get a siphon or a portion of it or a large contingent of it because we matter. And they know we matter. And then they treat us I only got to come to you every 4 years. And so just think about it. If you had a candidate that's in an election right now, that's running, that can affect your livelihood, the utility bills you pay, the food you pay, the transportation you may or may not get. But then that candidate in turn says publicly, I want no development on your side of town. I want no industry on your side of town. I want to keep you impoverished. They say that not just in their words or rhetoric, they say that in their actions. They say that in their movements. They say that in their votes and the company they keep. Sharon, if you have any thoughts on that, please fill us in.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about we're 13% of the population here. So at 10% to 12%, that's like 1,300 to 1,560 people, period. That's utterly ridiculous. Shanae? Oh, okay. And what I also want to add to that is when we look at Ocala and we look at the amount of the voter turnout in Ocala and we see the results. Well, how do we see the results? Ocala has gotten an industry that we should have. Ocala has been building in the way that we should be building here, especially with this so-called Research One top tier university here that has a monopoly on your workforce. That is the purpose of them not wanting any other industry to get here. If we had 2 or 3 other top industries brought here, just 2 or 3 companies that started their salaries at $20 to $28 or $30 to $30 an hour, we wouldn't even be talking about this crime that we have that's in community, because you have the ability to have a household income that allowed you to live a thriving in the way that the people on the west side of Gainesville get to live.
You gave an example last time, Sharon, of the actual what you call tertiary care when it came to the healthcare clinic. We have folks in our clinic in the eastern part of our county that we just got a brand new healthcare center built by UF Health or Shands, whatever they want to call themselves, this week. I want to talk about that, unpack that some more. There's some people in our community that say, well, something is better than nothing. I argue with you that's not true. Here's the deal. We took $5 million of our money, taxpayer money, our money, to pay to the University of Florida on land they own.
And that's $5 million is a lot of nothing, but go ahead.
And to Sharon's point, Sharon, what if you had or somebody had an emergency event? You got shot at 7:15 up. It's almost 7:30. You had to plan to get shot earlier because we can't serve you now.
Well,
But I hear, watch this.
At 8 o'clock, so it can't happen.
Okay, well, 8 o'clock. But watch this. If you go down the road, Sharon, down Newberry Road a little bit further, you see a standalone emergency care center that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You mean to tell me, Sharon, that our $5 million could not get us but scraps open till 8 o'clock on land that's not even on the tax rolls? But watch this, folks. We had a leader. Her name is Desmond Duncan Walker, who went to not only the county commission, but her own colleagues. And this is what she said. She went and looked at not only Northeast Florida, or whatever they call it, HCA Florida, but she also went to a private group called SciMed. They would have had that land on the tax rolls. They would have given us better hours. They would have had a larger complex and footprint, but we got scraps, and they act like they're doing something. There's this thing, Sharon, called the town and gown relationship. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. It's a facade. Shanae, you got any thoughts? Well, we're gonna wait for Shanae. We know Shanae is traveling, so we're gonna wait as she comes in. Sharon, what do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally had an experience where I was riding on the Hawthorne Trail on my bike and had an accident and had to try to get to some help and had to travel all the way somehow there, get somebody to meet me, my daughter to meet me, to drive me all the way back to the other side of town to get help at the Tower Road emergent care. But if there had been one on this side of town, I could have gotten there much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked to you a little bit about the importance of why this is all interrelated and how these decisions get made. We had people making decisions that think that they should take our taxpayer money, spend $5 million, and give us still scraps. That doesn't make sense anywhere. But while we're talking about that, let's also talk now about how Sharon brought up Ocala. Ocala is got better housing opportunities for people to move into. There are people that are wondering why we should just keep building more affordable housing. Of course, we need to have access for all kinds of housing and not just a descriptive. East Gainesville has no shortage of affordable housing. It's concentrated there. It's concentrated there for a purpose. It's concentrated to keep us impoverished, to keep us blind, deaf, and dumb. And that's what it's designed to do. So people can come in and take your properties and take your land and keep your schools impoverished and keep the crime rate up. People are profiting off of poverty. And here's the other true thing. Not all Black people are poor and not all white folks are wealthy. So we have all kinds of folks that live in this community. So if you ever hear it's this side of town and it's all poor, that's just not true. And we should be the designers of our own fate, the destiny that we desire. We should be.
If you don't build and make your own community, they're going to make it for you, and they're going to not make
exactly right.
You. They're going to make it to the benefit of their pockets. So there's that. Our property taxes determine how much it goes into our school. If I keep building only affordable housing in your community, then your schools will never grow, and that's what we're seeing that's happening.
So, do we have any more thoughts on that?
I don't know how many times we need to talk about this culture, but this is a culture that determines, that's created, that's so toxic, that says, oh, we'll decide what's best for you. And if you don't go along with it, you're not a true Democrat, or you're not a true friend, or, we put friends over communities. And we're just trying to understand that when you come to this table, that this is your table too. Okay, and you invest as much in this table as they do, and you have a right for your piece of the pie that you determine is your piece of the pie, not the piece of the pie that they determine. That you need to go out here and make these decisions that are best for those as a whole. And if they're not interested in making these decisions, or if they're not interested in passing policies, if they're not determining who is going to come here, and we're going to bring more than limited small tech companies that hire no more than 50 employees, and 30 of them have been flown in, and then they're not in your best interest. If the university wanted you to be able to afford to make a living at this rate, then they would have done it a long time ago. Unless you're a dean, a director, a tenured faculty professor, or higher, you're not making a livable wage, not by yourself. And so the most staff that runs the university is not paid a livable wage. And when you think about it, over 30 years of service, most people don't think about that income. Your top 5 years, it determines your income for your pension. So it keeps you in a cycle of poverty even after you retire. So what do we need? We need large industry here. We need a city commission that's going to say we're going to bring a large some competition, the same way Ocala turned around and made sure FedEx got there, made sure that they brought some industry in so that they can continue to live comfortably. And your choices need to reflect that. Now, if you haven't voted, we suggest, and really more than suggest, you'd be a fool not to show up at the poll tomorrow. You'll be a fool not to exercise your right to determine what's best for you and your community to go from surviving to thriving.
And I know we're going to get into candidates a little bit later. I wanted to touch on, because you sort of alluded to it, regardless of what party or ideology you subscribe to, that's a personal thing. But I do want to talk about when we have the power brokers in this community that want to keep us, that are part of that culture, that are part of keep the paternalistic culture of keeping us down. When they're telling you this person is bad and evil, I want to give an example of that. There is a candidate now running in the city that's talking about they don't want any development for our community in East Gainesville. They don't want it. And then they're trying to describe another person as being bad. Make sure that you do your diligence to look at all of the facts. It's always important to have the whole pie when evaluating, when you're voting. It's important to be an informed voter. And that's what I appreciate about what Shanae does. She puts it out there. She's saying why she stands in a certain place, or how it's going to impact our community. We all need to do that. I understand some of you may work 2 and 3 jobs. Some of you have families. We must take some time out for ourselves to educate on who these folks are, and not just align whether they have a little D behind their name or a D behind their name or an R behind their name. What is this person? And, if a person, they said, is, we all have stories, we all have backgrounds, we all have pasts. There is no such thing as a perfect person. And, and we're going to get to that when we get to the candidates, and I'm going to elaborate on that more. But before we talk about candidates, I think we want to talk more about not just economics, but what about education, Sharon? Anything on the front on education?
I think we've already kind of touched on education and what's necessary. I think we need to understand that we need to label for the educational system to work here in school. It starts with policy. It starts with investment. It starts with balance in the budget. And do parents have a role in that? Yes, they do. But so does your school board. So does fiscal spending. So does decision making. So does having expectation of children higher than we have for ourselves. Labeling our children constantly as bad, as disrespectful, and there are issues. We all have them. But I don't understand how we can have expectations from children that we don't have from ourselves. And that goes back to a true accountability. And so when we do that, then we make a decision. But when our kids don't have stability getting to and from school, when the school system doesn't have a system where they're paying bus drivers a livable wage or recruiting them and keeping them safe at all times, when there's food insecurity in the home and at school, when our schools are not producing, here's an idea. I don't think the only way to correct, if the only way we see to correct children's behavior is through inducing them through the bad school, the prison industrial complex, making them vulnerable to that early, instead of thinking about, I don't know, yoga, guided meditation before we start the class, deep breathing in and out, not understanding what they may be coming from and what they're experiencing in their household, how this our societal woes and our missteps as adults and parents have forced a stressful situation for our children. Why aren't we starting off the class with guideful meditation and mindfulness? Why aren't we using alternatives like yoga and stuff like that for detention? Why aren't we thinking about them in a caring and loving way? That's what I can't understand.
So
That's
Sharon,
a But the first thing we go to is, oh, the parents are lazy, the kids are bad, and we need to go ahead and create schools for them to rush them through the prison industrial complex, which doesn't get us any further. And that's utterly ridiculous. That's what I have to say on that front. Um,
I want to jump in. Can y'all hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
So I want to jump in even more basic than that. And so it has been my experience, and I go to a lot of meetings with a lot of families. The main point that you said is if they would just see us. I have gone to meetings where they say the children were so unruly and they were big and they were aggressive. And whenever I got to the meeting, what happened was nobody talked about what happened before the child got aggressive. No one talked about how other kids were picking on the child. The teacher did not intervene. When the child took the time to set it for themselves, that's when the teacher had something to say. No one's talking about kids that have things like opposition or defiant disorder. Teachers should be trained in order to help them utilize the strategies that are employed, and teachers disregard that. And then I don't want to also just put the onus on teachers when you're not actually we have one of the highest paid administrations in the state, but then our teachers are some of the lowest paid. And it's because we have a very top heavy district. Instead of utilizing that money at the district office and all of these administrative positions, there should be more money allocated to just professional development. And that's one of the things that actually is extremely problematic. Really effective teachers that actually have experience are leaving the district in droves, and nobody's having that real conversation as it relates to that. It's frustrating to me as well, even when I see candidates say, hey, I did this and I did that. First of all, there's not an I. The school board is a group of people. Second of all, when what happened is that you all changed the criteria to make the school grades go up, the school grades actually didn't go up. You're gaming the system. And that's of no benefit to our children. What you're telling me is you see our children as FTEs and not actually as people. And we really need to unpack and have that conversation.
I agree 100%. And it's all interrelated when we start to talk about money and taxes and property taxes and no low income. Now we start to see where the resources are so that we can pay our teachers a livable wage. We can have incentives. We can have the necessities that we need to try to dismantle some of these issues that our children have because they're experiencing trauma. Why are they experiencing trauma? Because there's a higher crime that they have to experience. They're traumatized. So these are the things that happen when children are traumatized.
And there's some other things I wanted to talk about when it comes to school. And I think there's a few important factors that are important, especially I said so. I put up a post this week about what I said. Lackawanna County Public Schools would see significant improvement with our elected officials who understood the following. And I think it's important to look at this. What would it look like? So intentional and consistent efforts to bridge the learning gaps of Black children that's missing on the school board, intricacies of social justice that are not just political sound bites, the importance of a comprehensive budget audit and conducting a forensic budget audit, the courage to address issues facing Black children, a superintendent selected from a pool of highly qualified candidates across the nation, a nationwide search, and a reduced environmental footprint through strategic school and building closures district-wide and not just in East Gainesville. Now, why do I bring up the last one? Number one is we've seen a decreased enrollment, but we're seeing spending of more money. The superintendent just recently balanced the budget on the backs of capital asset expenditures, which is fixing our schools. Why is that damaging? Well, guess what just happened at Newberry Elementary School? The air conditioner broke a few days before school, not just because they thought it was just busted. It was a line that was going out, condensation built underneath, and the current superintendent, had to do an emergency allocation. Facts. So this is important because where the money is being spent and how it's being spent, said it perfectly. We're top heavy. We need to have, it is imperative. This is why data is so important. I want to know when you come in The last time we did a redistricting district wide was in the 80s. The last time we had a real strategic plan was when? We need a strategic plan. And that is so important for how we're looking forward. So there are things that we're going to have to reduce our footprint, and not just in East Gainesville, folks. Hate to tell you, on the other side of town, that we're going to have to bring some schools together. We're going to have to make some K through 12s. We're going to have to make some middle school and high school mergers. That's going to be important for reducing our footprint with a reducing income. Or other option is you're going to continue to get charter schools, and who may select you, may not allow you. And Sharon can speak to all of that, because it's not just because of the color of your skin. If you're a disabled student who has disabilities, it's also about accessibility for your ability to get into a system. And the example of that is Newberry's, their recent idea to want to bring together to have charter schools. They didn't have an answer really to disabled students. It's, you get what you got. Maybe we can help you, maybe we can't. So that's just not the way we need to move. We need to be more thoughtful. We need to be more empathetic and compassionate to how we approach this issue. But facts and data also need to drive it. And we need people that can read that facts and data. So that is how I think about it as a system. And it also impacts the transportation system. When people are opening up charter schools, guess what, folks? Your biggest expenditure is going to be transportation. And if a district like Alachua County is struggling to get children, what makes some people think that they can start a school and do transportation? It's a real challenge, a huge challenge. So believe people in how they move, believe what's in their budget. If the numbers don't make sense, if the money is funny and the change is strange, there's probably a problem.
Yeah. So if your commissioner is that you want to vote for or not investing in the community through bringing in business, bringing in corporations that can hire people for a livable wage. They're not interested in creating policies and procedures and opening up healthcare facilities that pay for the land that they're using. Organizations and nonprofits such as UF to pay taxes on the land that they're holding on, or to pay for the expenditures that we pay for them. There's a problem. There's a real problem. All of this is interrelated. It then affects your schools. It affects your teacher pay. It affects the school on your side of town, which is why it looks inequitable. It affects buses and transportation. So you're at work and you're trying to figure out how your child is going to get to school the same time that they're talking about cutting back, the school bus, the city bus schedules, because they won't pay people a livable wage. It's all interconnected. And these are decisions that are made at a local level. So when you look nationally at what the Republicans were able to do, they strategically decades ago said, we're going to start attacking these local elections. We're going to take control of these local elections, the school board races, and we're going to start changing policy. All those policies, regardless of a political party, affect you. They affect how you live. They affect you more than the national race does. And this is something we don't really get, because these are the policies that determine how much your local utilities are going to run, how much is invested in your schools, how much is invested on your roads, how much is invested in your rec centers, on your parks. It's just and here's how it plays out. As soon as they decided they wanted Depot Park to be there and they wanted to gentrify all the way down to University Avenue and Main Street, here comes the repaving of Depot Road and the nice little circles and the beautiful park. And they pushed everything else outwards just to make sure that exists. Well, this is what it looks like when they're truly invested in your community. And I'm saying invested prior to the attack of gentrification. That's what we're saying. We don't have a whole lot of time left. Armando, did you want to run down the list of candidates? Yeah, let's talk about candidates.
I guess I want to start with a hot and heavy one, because it's really been news. First off, I want to give a kudos and shout out to Thomas Vu. This week, he was covered by the Alachua Chronicle. Kudos for him for setting the record straight on anonymous attacks that have come upon him about allegations that were investigated by the school district. and found it to be unsubstantiated, not true, in spite of some social media attacks. And in spite of that, kudos to him for actually responding to the Chronicle and addressing it and putting it to sleep. He will have my vote. I'm supporting him hands down. I just think it's time to turn the page. I want leadership that's going to be accountable and not make excuses. My situation, because I know a friend of mine and I are at odds on this, and it's okay. I just want somebody that can, understand and be accountable for their behaviors. I'm not going to go into other things, but I just believe Thomas will be accountable and won't make excuses if he makes mistakes. So I wholeheartedly am going to go there. What, y'all want to just play like I pick one, you go to the next one, and you go to the next one, so that way I'm.
We just go down. I'm voting for Thomas Vu. I think it's time for us to have some change at the top. Somebody who can look at things and strategically make decisions that's best for the entire school system. And I like systems that power communities from the bottom and then up instead of top down.
Yeah.
Shanae.
Hello, Shanae. Good to see you.
Hi there. I'm stationary finally. And we all know that I'm supporting Thomas this election. And you know me, I'm very clear. I love the incumbent as a friend. Decisions that are made at the school board have been very detrimental to our students. I understand that we all choose the hill that we want to die on. And she decided to down the hill with the superintendent who's not proven, hasn't any proven track record of anything. And at the end of the day, the purpose of the school board is to be the checks and the balances and not the rubber stamper. And so that part's extremely frustrating. And so getting people to understand that the vote is not your Valentine. We literally are trying to play a game of chess, and we got to understand to do what's important and that's what's right as it relates to our students. And so that's what Thomas has on my vote as well. And then while I'm here, we might as well jump into the next one, which is Desmond Duncan Walker. Of course, we're very clear, very adamant. The one thing about Desmond is she wasn't a person who set out to be a politician. Those of us in the community asked her to run because we felt like she would represent the community well. She has done that. So, in spite of juggling two sick parents, a sick grandfather, and then just a bunch of colleagues who are absolutely clueless as it relates to the needs of the Black community, she has stood tall, she has stood firm, things that she did not know. She made sure that she was fully educated and equipped to do those things. And public safety has been something that's been a priority for her, all the way from the K-9 unit, all the way to getting the road with lights and different things like that in East Gainesville, all the way to the work that she has done on gun violence that the city commission is now taking credit for as a whole, although almost all of them were directly opposed to it. And it's up to us to protect those particular elected officials that are actually doing the job that they're elected to do. And that absolutely is Desmond, hands down.
I agree with that. Desmond has my vote. She has the she has a passion behind her. We all go through life struggles, things that happen, unfortunately, to all of us at any given time, that could happen to any of us at any given time, that require us to carry on legacies and take care of our families and prioritize them. But the advocacy that she has shown on behalf of the community that has been forgotten, that has been run over, that has been disregarded audaciously, that she demands that you respect our community. She demands that you evaluate it, and it doesn't sit right to sometimes people's personal financial interests. And it's contrary to this culture that they have where they think of us as an afterthought. So because Desmond makes us a forethought, she has my vote.
I concur with everything that's been said. I guess I was accused, Shanae. I guess I was accused by the campaign manager of Harvey Ward that I was the loudest voice. I challenge and say Shanae's the louder voice than me for Desmond. But I wrote a letter on behalf of Desmond, so I made my stance clear in writing. I stand by it. I appreciate how intentional and authentic that Desmond is. The fact that she is dealing with what she deals with, and many times running on fumes. I don't know that I would have the strength to deal with aging parents, deal with a grandfather, run a funeral home, and then for somebody to have the audacity to question her, and you go around in public and say that's why you're running, and all we hear from you is that you want to feed the homeless. Well, I want to help promote you going back to feed the homeless because I'm going to vote for Desmond tomorrow. So I don't have a problem with the gentleman running, but I want to send Desmond back and have her break that record so she can be the first person since Sherwin Henry to be back in District 1. And I think she will win tomorrow. And I'm going to leave that at that.
And I think it's interesting, Armando, that
Yes, ma'am.
we have to break that record, which tells you there's an intentionality and to continuously come after people who are doing the job in that district to try to throw it off again. So,
And another person I want to talk about while we have it on this, I'm supporting Fareed Johnson. I understand that there is a push, and I've seen some people, Shanae and Sharon, that look like us, that are calling Fareed a criminal, that are saying horrible things about him and his family. And some of them, regardless of gender, are doing it. And they look like you and I, all of us on this broadcast. I want to say to us that, let me say something. We all have pasts. We all have stories. Fareed is a father, a son, a brother, somebody's child. But most importantly, he takes care of his child. He works very hard. He clearly has a command of the issues. And when it comes down, it has nothing to do with James Ingle. James Ingle might be a very well-intentioned person and is a nice person. I'm not here to question that. Here's what I am here to question. Regardless of who somebody says is the real Democrat, the person that's the real person for our community and for the well-being of everybody that's working class and working hard is Fareed, because he's never said he wants to deny anybody the right to provide for their family. The other opponent said he wants no investment and no development for East Gainesville. And James Ingle, I know very well because we ran together in 2012. He's the same James Ingle in 2012 as he is now. I watch people by the company they keep. He's with Harvey Ward, with Brian Eastman, and I believe you the first time.
I'm going to say that I'm going to vote for Fareed. I understand that it's really, really funny to me how we just pick and determine who's a bad guy and who's a good guy, who's a criminal and who's not a criminal. A lie can lead to a death, as we know, as Black people, we've experienced it before. Okay, so we've seen a lot of lying. We've seen a lot of backdoor deals. We can go and pull the history of the people and city managers and those that came here before who came and cleaned us out. But we don't call that criminals. There's a lot of criminal behavior that's in that city commission that hasn't been called out. And some people wear their crimes on their sleeves, and some people wear their skin on their sleeves. So it's easy to call us criminals. I don't think that's a coincidence, and I think there's some bias and there's some racism and there's some prejudice when we decide that we're just going to call Black people criminals, but not call out our friends who engage in criminal behavior, or their parents, or everybody else. If you want to go there, we can go there. Okay, but we're not going to go there right now. We're going to sit up there and say that we've all been hungry. Okay, when you concentrate poverty on one side of town, when you refuse to bring in the industry that's necessary for them not to have to engage in those behaviors, and you just want to engage in performative diversity, equity, inclusion, then you can sit up there and call people criminals when you've never had to be hungry in your life, when you have privilege and you have accessibility to privilege. Sometimes some of us, then we get to call people criminals. But I want to talk to the person who's been hungry before, and they understand what we're going through right now, so they have the best decision making to make those decisions. And I'm for any father. I got a wonderful father. If any of you know me in real life, I'm always bragging about my dad, who was a single parent, and we were hungry on some days, but we also thrived. So I'm voting for Fareed. Shanae?
We absolutely know that my vote is for Fareed. I feel like this: if the best thing that you got on him is to be offended about who endorsed him, he all right with me. The fact that we know that the city is one that is not working, and we know this by the culture of the city. So I don't know about anybody else, but my memory is long. And so the fact that there was a whole discrimination lawsuit that was filed, and the independent consulting firm that the city hired found that the allegations had findings that were positive for the people that filed them. We're talking almost 30 people that filed that were named in the complaint against the city. But and mind you, even as we have commissioners, quite a few of them that are currently on the dais that voted in favor of not doing anything or proceeding for as it related to the culture, even under the prior city manager. Let's be very, very clear. For me, they are not the people to be making decisions. So the likes of a Harvey Ward or Brian Eastman would never be the ones to tell me who to vote for because they help to perpetuate the negative culture that we already have in the city. And it's time for a change that has been long overdue. And so again, if the only thing that they got that states I shouldn't vote for Fareed is and mind you, and the person that endorsed him, I don't care. I can't stand him. I'm very, very clear with that. But at the end of the day, Fareed's character and who Fareed has always shown to be great, more better character than many of the people that are sitting on that dais. And then the next person I would like to jump into, hands down, is Latrell Simmons. You know, I'm loud, proud, vocal. Jokingly, I tell for Latrell the only negative that he is that he is my daughter's uncle, and nothing against him. I just don't do them people. So who his nephew is the only negative for Latrell. Other than that, he is the most qualified in the race. He is the only sheriff's candidate that actually has a viable plan for mental health services and for the sheriff's department to actually be a viable and contributory member to society. He's the only sheriff's candidate that proactively wants to have a civilian review board. And with the new law that was just passed in legislature, only sheriffs can actually do that. He has been to the FBI Academy. He has worked well under sheriffs that were on two different sides of the particular line. He's always maintained his integrity. Even when he was demoted and sent over to the jail, he took that with pride. The people there report how he came in on every shift in order to learn. So he was one that is always very humble and open to learning. And he's not one that's, oh, I'm just going to get rid of everybody. We're going to either coach you up or we're going to coach you out. That's actually leadership. He's a humble and a servant leader. That's what we need. And we don't need a yes man. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Adherence is always to the community. Even when they took the buses from the students at Eastside, the same thing we're fighting for now for the students at Parker Elementary, it was the trail who stood up even to say it and say, you got an issue with it, but I'm going to stand up for right with the people in my community. And those are the type of people that we need in leadership positions.
Armando?
Thank you. So Shanae helped me out with this one because, well, actually, partly Shanae, but I'm not supporting anybody that Harvey Ward is supporting, and I'm supporting Latrell. Latrell also. Let me be clear. That's what got me there, right? I was very deliberate. Latrell earned my vote really at the League of Women Voters. I liked him and another person, but what really solidified it is the more I listened, it was something I just liked. And the other thing, I want to be very intentional, real quick here and transparent. I was friends with the former sheriff, not the guy that currently there, the former sheriff, the one that resigned. I think it's time to turn the page. We need somebody that's going to be more communicative. My former friend doesn't talk to me anymore because all I did was say, I think, I hope you can fix it. Not everybody's wrong. Being a leader is also being accountable and saying, you know what? I need to look inward and see what I can do to fix things. And I was hoping that he would do that. That didn't happen, and I want to turn the page. So I think it's time to turn the page on former leadership and turn into a new direction. And I think Latrell will be a fresh face, a fresh voice that we need now. And I truly believe in that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm voting for Latrell. Also, I think to have something you never had, you got to do something you never done. Time for us to do something we never done. We need to also really, 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 really be intentional right here in this particular vote. And this is because we need to understand what they're trying to line up for primarily our community. Let's just get honest on that. They brought back the police dogs. They're building that armory right across from the jail. That's not a coincidence. DeSantis has his private police force working to help push us through the pipeline. And we need citizen review boards. We need to have a candidate that's open and willing to talk to the community, hear our community, and actually implement some things to help our community as a path line. All of these votes, they seem disjointed, but they're all important and they all build upon one another. To go back to what we were talking about earlier, about how these local elections impact us directly and quickly and have the biggest impact on our lives right away.
Next race.
We can go to Dejan Kane. And I want to be the person to jump in and state that I'm supporting Dejan. I was already supporting Dejan, but the icing on the cake is when I saw the incumbent actually post about the urgent care center in East Gainesville as if that's a plus or a positive. It is extremely frustrating because the people of East Gainesville were very clear that that is not what we wanted. We are also very clear that we had to pay $5 million for an urgent care within our communities where that money could have been better spent. Additionally, the hours of the urgent care is just like you're going to the urgent care to go to the doctor. It would have been better suited for people to actually go find primary care doctors. And so for you to highlight that as if it is a positive thing means that you're absolutely tone deaf to the things that are actually going on in this community. And that's extremely frustrating amongst other things. We have to get to a point where we are bold and we are deliberate about finding people with resources. And one thing about it is I think Dejan is often misunderstood. He's absolutely brilliant and he's had some amazing mentors that will help guide him through the particular process. And I saw that they were stating as it relates to mailers because that's what white people do. They want to get political in that way. I watched who Dejan has aligned himself with throughout the years. And some of those people have already served prior to and done phenomenal jobs when they served in their particular roles. And so that is the reason that I actually am supporting Dejan.
I want to say something in this race. It goes back to similar with Fareed's race. There's some similarities here, and it's when our people are making statements about another face that looks like us, and that's painful. When I see another black face on Facebook or any social media taking a shot and saying this or this or that, and you're supporting somebody because they are like, their skin's a lot lighter, their eyes are a little bit bluer, their nose is a lot narrower. Is it really about that, or is it just anti-blackness? And to quote a friend of mine, it's a hell of a drug. So I have no dog in the hunt because I can't vote in that race. It's a single-member district. It's going to work itself out. So I have no dog in the hunt. So that's just where I stand. I've known Dijon since 2012, a long time, but I have no dog in that hunt. So I can't vote in that race.
Yeah, Dejan, that's all I'm gonna say. Same thing last.
And then the final race is Amy Trask. And so with Amy, she is running against David Areola. Answer that for Cully. She's running against David Areola. Da- Cully.
For me?
No, he's trying to get here in the middle of a live. Sorry, y'all. We're prepared for an event that we're having this evening. With David, we all know that he served on city commission. For me, he flip flops sometimes on particular issues that are really important, which is problematic for me. The one thing that was a deal breaker for me was when it came to the single family housing ordinance and the fact that the very community that no one ever listens to, we were very vocal, we were out front, we were very consistent, and he ignored every single thing that we said. And I have no more space for another person that wants to represent us that doesn't listen to us. With Amy, she's actually very solution oriented. Actually, she would serve well as it relates to the state house because she knows how to actually write legislation. And legislation is exactly what it actually is about. So being a person who's able to write legislation and be able to help guide it through particular processes means that she will have a great deal more effectiveness with actually getting bipartisan bills passed and bills that actually will help to strengthen the family unit. And that's extremely important to me.
So I'm gonna jump in and say I did a lot of research this past week on Amy and David. I agree is flip floppy. You never know where his vote is going to go. We tried that, did that. It didn't benefit our community as a whole. Well, some communities better than others, but not ours. And I'm willing to try once again. We need some new blood in here to get in here and do some things that we've never done before. And this is the year for that to happen. So my vote will be with Amy.
I guess I don't have a vote in that race because it's not in my district, but have plenty to criticize David Areola on. Transparency. I did contribute to David Areola. I have plenty to criticize him about. I don't know Amy Trask at all. I know nothing about her, so I'm not quick to just say that I'm going to jump out there if I don't know anything about you really quickly. So I'm kind of paused because the last time I did that was with Anna Prizia, and I have buyer's remorse. But I will say that if you all done your research, I'll continue to do mine. She seems very like a decent person. I don't know. Again, I got to do some more research. But I will tell you, if anything about David Areola, that would be a deal breaker for me was not any of those things. It was when black women were being attacked, like Gail Johnson and Deborah Bowie, and he said nothing. He said nothing. When the city manager was going to be terminated, he didn't even make a motion for a second. So that's what I would say is a criticism of him for me. But again, I did contribute to him, so I like to be transparent. So there you go.
Do you need me to cook? Do you need me to cook?
So thank you both for taking your time out of your schedule and fitting this meeting in. We had to have it earlier because we're actually having an event for Black organizers and volunteers, which is a health, healing, and wellness event. And we decided to do it on Monday, the day before the election, because anybody that does movement work or works to get our people out to vote and advocate for themselves understands how hard this work is. So in honor of Black August, myself and I think there's about 18 other organizers are going to spend the night actually having a good time and unwinding and getting ready for election day tomorrow. So the reminder and the purpose of each of these videos is for education, but also to rally our people and rally the troops. As we stated, the turnout so far is only 14, I think 0.25% the last time I looked. And we've been tracking in the predominantly Black precincts at about 1% of that 14%. So that means there's lots of opportunity to get to the polls tomorrow. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On election day, you must vote at your assigned precinct. You're welcome to go to the Alachua County Supervisor of Elections website and enter Precinct Finder. You'll be able to enter your address and find out your precincts. By law, you are to vote at the precinct where you live. If your address on your license does not match your precinct, you go by where you live, not the address on your license. I want to be very clear with that. If you need to change your address, that is pretty much the only thing that you can change your voter registration tomorrow and still be able to vote tomorrow. We have told y'all over and over, don't wait till the last minute. I am aware that many of you all still have waited to the last minute. So please go before lunchtime. I don't want to be calling y'all through the phone and texting y'all like I did last election talking trash. I love y'all. That is the reason that I go so hard for y'all. And it's the reason that I cuss y'all out because there's so much at stake. We can't F this up. Are there any closing thoughts from Sharon or Armando?
Yeah, look at your voter, who you're going to vote for. Have that in your mind when you get there, because sometimes you'll get there and you'll forget everybody. So I suggest that you take the voter sample ballot that came in the mail. Look at that, have that with you so you know who you're voting for when you get in the booth. And like I said, all of this is always about love. I'm here for Black love and revolution.
And Armando.
Vote for Boo, vote for Desmond Duncan Walker. Just go vote.
Indeed. And also, as a reminder, pinned to the top of my page is a voting guide. I know many of you all have already reached out and then let me know that you cast your vote. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for trusting me. But now the final ask is get your ass off of this live and call or text 10 of your friends and make sure they get their ass to the polls as well. Y'all have a good night.